Hello, welcome back to Division I Rejects. I'm your host, Kobe Manzos, episode 151. I'm joined tonight by a pretty awesome guest. He's starting quarterback of the Division II national champion, Harding University Bisons. Cole Keylon is on the show tonight. Pumped about that to get him on here. We had Jalen Spicer on a while back, representation from the Harding gang over there. They had an incredible season. Excited to talk with him about that. Tonight is February 19th. Got some other great stuff, some good points around the small college football world to talk about. There's a Division III player who invented new protective headgear that's like the real deal. This shit is legit. It's being tested by a lot of big-time accrediting universities and different kinds of tests to prevent certain kinds of head trauma, concussions, neck and head area injuries, all the big ticket item kind of things. So we're going to talk about him and his invention and, you know, kind of implementing that into football world here, which is a really cool story. We've got the best small college football Madden covers. So just kind of compiling some of the stuff we've done. Obviously, I've made a few over here at D1R. Just wanted to, just a more of a fun piece. And then talking about that on the same point, what would it take to bring small schools into, I said Madden covers. I meant NCAA football covers. They interchangeable in my head, sorry. What would it take to bring small schools into NCAA football, the video game from EA, Electronic Arts over there? We're going to talk about that and like what goes into, you know, these schools. What kind of assets are they sending? What do they need? What does the game need from these schools for them to be incorporated into the game? But as always, you can watch this episode on YouTube if you are. Don't forget to subscribe. Appreciate you. Already over 1,000. Let's hit 2. I don't know, 1.5, something. Let's set a goal and hit it. That'd be great. Otherwise, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, hit all the socials. If you want to fast forward any part of the conversation, use the timestamps in the video chapters below on YouTube. They're also in the description on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. Let's get right to the guest conversation with Cole. Joining the show tonight, a D2 national champion, proud Bison. This man has a 100% completion percentage in national championship games. The commander of the flex bone himself, Cole Keylon. What's up, dude?
What's up? How are you?
Dude, the introduction writes itself with you, man. Just like, whether it's the quirky offense or the run that you guys have had this last year, definitely someone I've wanted to get on the show, man. I'm glad to get you on here.
Sure, I appreciate it.
Absolutely, dude. Well, start it off just like this. 677 rushing yards, 661 passing this year. What does that make you?
I don't know. I mean, 15 games, you know, typically your quarterback has more yards in both aspects. But, I mean, in our offense, we spread around so much. I think we had over 13, 14 guys over 100 yards on the year, which is crazy in itself. So, I mean, I don't really look at the stats too much. I honestly try not to because I think when we played 11 games my freshman year, I think my stats were better. So, try not to really look into it.
I was hoping you were going to say, like, you know, maybe like dual threat or something along those lines, and I was going to counter. I was going to say game manager.
I can't argue.
No, but a damn good one. And I love the hilarious talking points right now around that term and like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, there's not one person on this earth that could define that and whether it's a negative or positive thing. But what I do know is what you've done for this offense has certainly been a positive thing, and you're a big part of the success that you guys have had. And speaking of that success, 6,160 yards. What the hell goes through your mind when you hear that number? And just talk about the mindset of what it takes to achieve that as a team. Obviously, I know you guys didn't get in the locker room and say, hey, we're breaking that fucking record this year. I know that wasn't a conversation on day one, but you did it. Talk about what it took to get there, man, because that is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, last year we went 9-2, didn't make the playoffs, and had kind of an off year. And then we get back into 2023 season, and you know, we start out, get a little hot. Like, we don't think anything about like records. We're like, oh, we need to make the playoffs. We need to make the playoffs. Then we get the 1 seed, and it's like, then we build these games. We have 630 rushing one game, 500 the next, 450. Get in the national semifinals, and we have, I think, 4 something, and it's like, well, you guys just broke the record. And then we had 500 more after mines. It's just like, there's so much that goes into that. This offense is so detail oriented, and just like, it's more than you'd ever expect detail wise. And like, all 11 guys have to be almost perfect every play with all that we do.
Absolutely, dude. And one of the details from that offense, and people rip on or make jokes, myself included, about how much you guys do or do not throw the ball. When you did, it was pretty efficient, about 30 yards per play when you guys dished the rock out. What kind of correlation is that like in a practice setting? Obviously, they don't have you dropping back in practice because you don't do that on Saturdays. How often are you throwing in practice? And like, is it really that much of a difference from someone on the outside who might think that you guys just strap it up and go at each other for an hour and a half every day?
Oh yeah, we always joke around with the people we're playing against. Like we were playing against Lenore Ryan in the semis, and they were like, "Man, I know y'all hate practice, but we don't hit, we don't touch each other in practice.
Okay.
Like our
Yeah.
practices are like almost all on air. Like we don't go live past fall camp, like nothing. So it's just like working on our craft, and then throwing. I mean, I probably throw two receivers probably throw 50 balls maybe every practice,
Yeah.
which I assume in the spread it's like 500. So I mean, we throw a little bit. And the thing about our passing offense, it's either there or it's not. Like it's either a touchdown or it's an incompletion. So I mean, you kind of have to be efficient when you do that.
Make you want to gamble after throwing a couple of those, dude. But we don't do that because
Absolutely.
NCAA student athletes and all that's not real. But talking about that offense, and I think it's very interesting. You guys brought in over 40 this National Signing Day, which is a large class in itself, especially when you bring back a good amount of talent. And when you bring those guys in, it's obvious like they don't show up to day one of camp or whatever. Although I do think it would be hilarious, by the way, if all the freshmen of college football teams didn't know the scheme that they were coming into. So you commit to a program, you show up on the first day, and you're sitting there, you're praying, and you're a wide receiver, and you're like, man, like, please, like, give me the spread, give me the spread, give me the spread. And they see the bone on the whiteboard the first day, and they're like, no! Like, no way. But that's not how it works. They know what they're getting themselves into. They're bought into that. But how much does it take, really, that word or that phrase, bought in, is thrown around a lot, for some of these younger guys to really embrace the culture and the style of play that you guys have? What kind of process is that like, and how quickly do they jump on the train?
Yeah, you'd actually be very, very surprised how many people get here week one of practice and they're like, "Wait, what offense do we run?"
No
Like
shit.
we
No
got dudes
way.
don't know what they're getting into. Yeah, I mean it's surprising how many. And then, uh, I mean, typically we don't report for summer, so we get all summers optional until fall
I
camp.
see. Okay.
So, so if you're on offense, especially, the chance of you redshirting is essentially 100%.
Okay.
So you get a whole year under your belt. And the thing is about that, like a lot of people either learn they're in the flex bone, realize they don't like the flex bone, and or realize they don't want a red shirt, and they like say 50% of each class dips. So it turns into like survival of the fittest. And after a year, like you're either bought in or you're not.
You see a lot of successful programs kind of follow that methodology, though, like weeding out some of those guys, especially when you have a quote unquote like unorthodox style that you guys have. But then you go back and talk about some of the other things that you already mentioned, the no contact during practice. And you think, the easiest correlation for me to make is NFL teams. How often are the freaking Detroit Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs, just random examples, like how often are they suiting up and going? Now, Lions might be a bad example with
Dan Campbell.
MCDC over there. Yeah, that might have been a bad example on my part, but per typical NFL team, the great teams and the high level teams at that are able to find this. Some guys call it like a 75, 85% where you're flying around, you're making plays, you're going through your scheme, your all your assignments, but you're not finishing. And I think there's a very weird balance. I think it goes back to that bringing in the classes and the underclassmen, redshirting and all that has to certainly help them get up to speed and kind of get with the tempo you guys have at practice.
Yeah, so a lot of our underclassmen red shirts, they spend whenever season gets like started, like actual game one, practice week and on, like our red shirts are typically like our fit team because we're not going against our defense, we're going against a fit team.
Of course.
And that also gets into a completely different thing because we don't know what defense people are going to run against us.
Yeah,
So we practice everything. Like
that's a good point.
yeah, so like my freshman year, I remember we were playing Ouachita, and they were number like 5, we were like number 7, and we practiced specific tags, plays, everything for a specific 4-2 defense that they run, and they came out in what we call the Northwest Missouri defense, 4-3 deep Mike at about 8 yards, and completely. I mean, I was 18-year-old freshman. It completely threw me
That's
off. I was
something,
just
dude. Because you've
I
got no,
mean,
like they've obviously adapted because they don't play another offense that looks like that. And because of that,
hmm,
you don't have the film to base their reaction. And it's this game of cat and mouse that in that situation favors the defense because there's nothing on tape for you to prepare for. And that is interesting. But let's talk about talk about the conference play a little bit in the Great American, the GAC. Feels like a conference doesn't necessarily get the love that talking heads like myself will talk ad nauseum about the GLIAC and the MIAA and the Gulf South and those kind of things. The Great American Conference has had a lot of teams make the playoffs and make some runs. You guys obviously being at the forefront of that. What does the conference need to do, if anything, to be in the same conversation as some of those other ones?
the best answer. I mean, perform in the playoffs. Like, there's been a lot of years where we've been one and done. There's a lot of years that OBU, Henderson have been one and done, and it's just like, I mean, then there's teams like Northwest Missouri, Grand Valley, Ferris that every year they're in, like they're a threat to win it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I
And
mean,
that's, not to cut you off, that you're kind of just lead me into my next point, and that is you knew we were going to talk about it, the gauntlet that is Super Region 3, the playoff bracket buster that is Division 2 and crushes hopes and nightmares of fans of the game across the country every year. That's a big stepping stone in that fact. And when you look at the Great American Conference, you have 4 teams with 9 wins this year in a conference that has a good amount of talent. So I certainly wouldn't argue that the depth is not really there, especially you talk about that top third of the conference with teams like Ouachita and you guys and Henderson and, squads like that. And the problem is you're going into these playoffs and you've already got the gauntlet off the rip. So it's a very interesting kind of dance that you play. But as far as your guys' run this year, talk me through those 2 ridiculous games in the second and third rounds and how you managed to find a way to win in both those.
man, so I'd say Central Missouri has the best offense in the country by far.
Fair.
Like, obviously excluding ourselves for the sake of the conversation.
Yes.
And
Hey, yeah, that's a good step back there. The boys appreciated that one for sure. But the Harlan Hill voters would agree with that first assessment for sure.
and then I think Grand Valley had the best defense, excluding us in the
There you go.
country
There you
by
go.
far. So, I mean, going through the Central Missouri game, they went down, scored first drive, and we're like, whoa, like that never happens. And then we got the ball back, had a grinder about 10, I think it was like an 8-10 minute drive, go score, and then we realized it was gonna be a grind. And in that game we had some things go wrong. We dropped a pick,
Mm-hmm.
or not dropped a pick. We had a chance to get interception, and that would have, if we would have picked it off and scored, if we would have capitalized on a few drives on offense, that's a 28-point game. Like they were a great team, but I'm sure they missed out on opportunities, but we missed out on a lot of opportunities ourselves.
For sure.
So that one, and coming down to the block field goal, I mean, that was pretty awesome. I wouldn't change it at all.
That was
But
insane.
yeah, and then
Oh my
Grand
God.
Valley, I mean, we get out there first drive, first play, we run zone dive for about 8 yards, get a face mask on top of that. A few plays later, get a pass interference, and we're on the 25. We're like, oh, we're in business. And that's about as far as we got until the fourth quarter with about 3 minutes left.
Yeah, that one was awesome. And like watching the end of that one, it's the classic case of the unstoppable object, that's you guys, versus the or unstoppable force versus the immovable object being that Laker defense. And again, we've talked about a lot of those guys, had Abe and Gilchrist and some of the other guys in the front 7 on here a lot, but just like front to bottom, like it's top to bottom, those guys come downhill, they play heavy at the line of scrimmage, and obviously we're ready for your scheme. But again, it's a big contribution for that offensive line unit and for you guys as an entire unit. The fourth quarter is when you start to wear down teams like that. Grand Valley's not a team that usually that happens to. So you guys just kick it into a next gear on that last drive. Was it just obviously backs against the wall? Had to be kind of the mentality there.
Yeah, I mean, like got the ball with about I think like 8 minutes to go in the fourth, and we knew like this was it had to be it. And though talking about our O line, I mean they're phenomenal. Obviously, best O line in statistical history with the 6160
There you
that
go.
you mentioned. And like most of the interior D linemen that we play leave the game on crutches. So they're getting, I mean, cut, double teamed. Like they don't have an easy night. So yeah, wearing on them
That's tough.
for sure. And then getting into that last drive, I mean, like we obviously in the flex zone we have a big, like our big ideal is like doing it for the guy next to you. And I mean, shoot, you're talking about back against the wall. We're just talking about like do it for each other and like let's go get another game together. And
Yeah.
that's what we did.
Absolutely, man. You got, obviously the credit goes to the offensive line because that offense, and any offense, doesn't work if you can't move those bodies. But you talk about the talent in that backfield, too, in the season that Dela Cruz goes and has, and guys like Spicer on the outside that become those daggers. And I feel like those kind of, you hit the dive, maybe get outside, and then the counter, or whatever kind of outside heavy hitters come, and that's just like sinking a dagger into any defense and just taking the air out of guys. But, talking about your team specifically, you've been in the upper echelon of the conference as far as the GAC is concerned for a while this year. Certainly no fluke for you guys, although it's obviously further than you've gotten before. It's not like you just, turned it up this year. You guys have been performing at a very high clip. Not like you switched that up. You've also, Coach Simmons has been there since 2017, I believe, so it's not like he just comes in and just energizes, the team out of nowhere. What was it about this year? Obviously, it was not easy to get to that point, but you look at the end result this year compared to years past. What are the couple things that really stand out to you about the squad that made it happen?
Yeah, I think the year we went 9-2 last year opposed to this year, like we would play teams and we'd beat them, but like we wouldn't blow them out. And the teams this year, the teams that we were beaten by, 14, like 7, 17, we're beaten by 60, 65. So it's just our ability to put full games together. I mean, shoot, our offense, like just being able to do that for 15 weeks, I credit that a lot to not killing each other in practice.
Yeah.
And then, if you've watched any of our games, you've seen our defense, they're going to show up every time. Like best D line in the country, best front seven in the country. And our DBs are dang good too.
Yeah, for a team, that's the crazy thing is that, I think, again, as an outsider's perspective, people might think, practicing against each other, which, again, doesn't really, we're not really getting ones-on-ones very often here, right? But practicing against each other, like these guys might not have a lot of reps at like rushing the passer. You guys do that really well. You guys get back to the quarterback incredibly well. Your defensive backs have a lot of really good instinct. And the passing attack is not somewhere that you like just fall apart and falter, which is kind of a really cool point. But to kind of close it off here as far as, your squad, I'm looking forward maybe to next year a little bit. We've seen some national powers. We've talked about some Super Region 3 teams like Ferris and Pittsburgh State that are kicking things off in week 0, which is really exciting. Teams like Northwest, Minnesota State, Bemidji Tech. Any word on schedule for you guys, 2024 coming around the corner here? Or?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. I've been seeing that, and I've been intrigued to see if we're doing anything, but I'm not sure. We haven't been around our coaching staff at all, really. We start spring ball tomorrow, which is early. So
fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm sure we'll know in the next month or two.
Yeah. Nobody's standing behind the camera like. No.
I don't know anything. I tell you.
Yeah, I know. Now I know, like right now in this period, you've got, I believe it's like 2 hours of like skill position work per week. Are you guys working with anything like that or no?
All we've done so far is just like our training, our
for sure
like conditioning and workouts, and then we go out. We're going out tomorrow for the first time in helmets and running through I think a brief practice type thing.
Awesome. Yeah. Get the band back together, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that. And you were saying before we got recording, like after the championship game, like just craziness, right? Like everyone disperses because the time of year, like everyone's been together for so long and just trying to get home, and people are all over the place. I didn't even get a team photo after the game.
Yeah, no. So I think the national championship game was December 16th, and I think everybody on the team was done with their finals by the 13th.
Yeah.
So we were in McKinney, done with our finals. We play the game, and then probably half the team stays in Dallas for the night, does whatever. Half the team goes home. Half the team goes back to Searcy. It was no team picture didn't work. We didn't see our coaches weren't all back together until January, which was insane.
That is ridiculous.
It's crazy, man. Just going home for break didn't even sink in.
Yeah, Jesus. But I'm sure you wouldn't have it any other way, huh?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
No, hell no, dude. Sweet. All right, Cole. Hey, that's all I got for you, dude. I appreciate you putting up with my antics, trying to bait you a little bit, but glad I could get you on here and talk a little bit of ball. I'm excited to watch more of your guys' games. I wish I would have started watching earlier this year. You know, you guys put me on about halfway through, and I started to really tune in and see what you guys were all about. Safe to assume that I will know from the first snap this year, and I'll be locked in. How about that?
All right, sounds good.
It's not going to take till week 5 for me to tune into the Bison over there, dude.
All right, I got you.
Awesome. All right, man. I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on tonight. Have a good one, brother. I know we'll talk again.
You too. Appreciate you.
See ya. Huge thank you to Cole for coming on the show. We're going to switch gears, move over to the Division III realm, and really cool story tonight about a current player that has made a new kind of protective headgear for football players. This is the man right here, Johns Hopkins safety Carter Hogg, taking position to new level as inventor of protective headgear. That's a tweet from the Baltimore Sun. There's a bunch more places reporting on this. There needs to be even more because this is such a cool and unique story about a current player. I believe he's a sophomore right now for the Blue Jays that is making some big waves in the football and kind of the health world with what he's done. And I think the best way to describe this for you is by literally just showing you a picture of what exactly he's got going on. And then after that, kind of describing it. Because I think seeing the picture first is just very interesting and not exactly what you expect. This is the headgear that has come into question and more so that is trying to be implemented and is currently under a lot of testing to prevent a lot of that head and neck area trauma. Not at all what you think, right? And when you think about preventing head and neck trauma, we always seem to think outside of the helmet and adding additional padding and other ways of cushioning these really high impact blows to this kind of area, right, of the players that are running around and making all these big hits. His rationale with this is making something that goes underneath the helmet that can be worn by all players. And he talks about it right here. He says, quote, "It's essentially a flexible neck brace. It's not going to restrict the movement of the player whatsoever during the normal play, but when you do take that hit, it actively hardens, and in doing so, resists the skull's movement, so the acceleration of the head itself is reduced drastically." In theory, makes a lot of sense because for people who don't know, a lot of the time, not obviously every time, there's many instances and differences, but concussions happen when it's not maybe necessarily the hit itself, it's the jarring motion when the brain, my very basic Neanderthal understanding of medicine here, I don't claim to be anybody with any kind of degree, but that sloshing kind of motion of the brain, and that's when it moves back and forth and has damage to different cells and neurological activity and those kind of things. It's that movement of the brain inside of the actual skull and the head that really causes those concussions. Obviously, the hits alone are not great in themselves. But that's what he's talking about here, this thing hardening. In my head, I don't know why, my mind went immediately to like an oobleck, if you remember, like from grade school, that kind of substance, where it was like nice and like you put your hands in it and it like flows around, whatever. But as soon as you punch that shit, like brick wall, like hardens up immediately. Very maybe abstract, weird analogy, not one you probably thought you were going to hear on the podcast tonight. That's where my mind went to immediately when I saw this and I heard his description of kind of the actual inner workings of what this piece does. And, you know, reading more about it, the inspiration for him, like, yeah, he's obviously taken some hard hits in his football career, but the inspiration actually comes from his older brother, FJ, who suffered a career-ending hit as a linebacker, Washington and Lee University. It was 2022 in the conference championship game. And apparently, you know, reading here, when the game was over, FJ couldn't remember playing in the game because of head trauma that he experienced during. So he says here, it's talking about the brother here, he says he took a hit to the side of the head, just filling a gap on a normal run play. It was really difficult seeing him go through not only the immediate aftermath of that, but basically a 2-year recovery period for him just to get back to where he was before that hit. So really a major setback for his older brother here. And that's when he started researching concussions, ways to prevent them, and kind of came up with this idea. He calls it gator skin. It's a balaclava type garment meant to be worn under the helmet that was launched this last year in 2023. And I do believe I have his website here to pull up. Just want to shout the kid out. Like, this is just really cool stuff. So here is the Gator Skin website. You can see it here. Keep your head in the game. The ultimate brain protector for all athletes. And it's just like, it's very cool that this seems to really pick up some really good steam. And you can see here kind of on the shop section, there's a couple of different pieces here, the PPE and then the teams. And then you've got this guy. Let's see what this is all about. Click on here on the ice. But a lot of really cool Cool stuff, excuse me, here. So this is a more hockey form, kind of like alternative, but a lot of the same kind of ideas. You can see this has already been picked up by a lot of acclaimed places. You see, as seen on SB Nation, ESPN, Reuters, like all these media organizations that have picked up his story. So we are certainly not the first ones on the story for this guy, but what makes it really interesting and what's really awesome about it is that they have done some legitimate studies, and these ones were conducted at Virginia Tech's Helmet Lab. It found the product reduced the risk of concussion by 59%. Current testing is still ongoing. I think they're very much still in the relatively early stages of seeing the full-time effects, and obviously you're not going to get 100% foolproof data without putting this out into the field and seeing how it affects the athletes out there. So really cool stuff. 59% reduced risk of concussions, at least what they found so far at the Virginia Tech Helmet Lab. And another cool piece, you think about other things that have been implemented, there's the one right now that's I'm trying to think of what it's called. It's that little neck, the Q collar. That's it. Q collar. And so the idea behind, I'll pull up a picture for those of you not familiar, but the Q collar, basically the idea behind it is that it's putting pressure on your jugular and your neck. And here is a great example of the Q collar right here on Tony Pollard of the Cowboys. I will show you guys that right here. So the Q collar right here is another example of something that's come out and tried to take over that space, and also just help in general the health of some of these athletes. You see there, it comes in, it applies pressure right here on the jugular of your neck. The rationale, my understanding, is that when it squeezes down here, it's increasing blood flow to the brain and kind of the upper head area. And so when that happens, you're kind of filling up this space and not allowing your brain to do that sloshing around and do that jostling around. You're kind of keeping it in place by increasing the blood flow at your neck here. It's a good thing this kid goes to Johns Hopkins and not some other spot. He obviously knows what he's doing. Please, nobody let me ever be in charge of some shit like this. It's awesome that we have humans that are able to put this kind of stuff together, because just the thinking and the rationale that goes into this is awesome. So I wanted to take a quick kind of point out of the show here and just lead with that, because I thought Carter and what he's doing over there is special. So shout out to Carter, shout out to Johns Hopkins, love a small school college football connection. That's kind of it, man. What else can you say about that stuff? Let's talk, though, about some of the best small school NCAA football covers. We posted some of our D2 covers earlier today, and this is just fun for me. I like doing this shit. All the big college football teams do it. Why not us? Why not the D2 level? So our guy Zach Zabrowski on the Harlan Hill edition, the year he's had at UCM, he's coming back for another year, which is going to be outstanding. Excited to see that. How about Johnny Football edition with maybe a different Johnny Football than you expect, but Matoka there with Buster. Is it Buster? The Blaster. Blaster behind him. One of the best live mascots in college football over there at Mines. And then the man Tanner Volk over at Central Washington. Lockdown edition. He was, just fantastic this year and was third place in the Harlan Hill Award voting, Cliff Harris Award winner, and amongst other things, All-American, Elite 100. Dude racked up a ton of honors, almost set the record for NCAA interceptions. So we had some fun with those kind of records, but there were some teams that did a really good job as well. I guess before we get to them, I also have some D3 covers that have not been posted yet. I'm going to pull those up real quick because you guys will appreciate these ones as well. Always thinking about the D3 and the NAI guys too. We'll get to NAI eventually. I just haven't made the actual graphics yet. How about a dark horse edition in D3 with the man Zach Boys, Cortland, the Red Dragons? They come and win the Natty this year. And then moving over to the Cliff Harris edition with Owen Grover, the linebacker from Wartburg, him and that whole team, they just put together a stellar season. And then, of course, the Gallardi edition with Luke Lanin and the North Central, the Cards there. So some really cool stuff with that. But let's talk about some of the teams I thought did a really good job and just some really cool graphics that they put out. The first one of which, how about Wayne State? That being the Wayne State in Nebraska that put out these ones. Really clean, really sick concept. for the paw. That's dope. And you'll notice a lot of these squads, this might be the only one that uses Xbox like in their template. I feel like everyone who's done this has done like PS5, which, I mean, I got a PS4, so I guess I'm just kind of out of the game regardless. But really clean concept here from Wayne State. I thought theirs was pretty dope. Also, we had, if I can find my mouse, there it is. Couple D3 squads that made some pretty cool ones. Looks like we've got University of Wisconsin lacrosse did a couple neat ones here. I love their color scheme on a lot of these. Those jerseys are pretty sweet. We obviously saw those in person when we did game day down there. So sometimes these graphics I think are a layup for them. But a different WIAC team with I would say a better design right here. Oshkosh dropping some heat with the PS5 mock-up and the Jets in the background. They done some pretty cool stuff. It's kind of interesting to see, like, they might have put their like athletic branding and football identity around this like fighter jet. Like they do their visits in like the leather jackets and stuff, which is really cool. Like Peter Jennings and that staff down there, they're certainly in touch with all the social media and things. We talk about them taking the recruits out on pontoon boats. Like they do so much cool stuff down there. The Titans do. And you know what? It's cool that they do that because they got a damn good football team that can back it up. They're a pretty solid squad. Funny comment right there. Guys, come on. Xbox, without a doubt, a better console. I disagree, but that's neither here nor there. And then finally, how about an NAIA team that did a pretty cool one? Before we talk about what it would take to actually bring these teams into the NCAA football universe, Madonna dropped this dope one. I thought that was pretty cool, the little lightning bolt. Super simple, clean. I liked it. So let's talk about what it would actually take, though, to bring these teams, D2, D3, NAIA teams, into the newly announced, I guess, highly anticipated, not newly announced, but recently announced, NCAA College Football 25 game. I don't think you guys realize how much goes into this from like a school standpoint. It's kind of ridiculous. There's an article on 24/7 Sports talking all about FAU, Florida Atlantic, and what they sent in for the college football video game. And, you know, it's been almost 3,400 days since an officially licensed college football video game has been released. That's crazy. Denard Robinson was on NCAA 14. That was July 9th, 2013 when that was released. Really ridiculous. The targeted release for EA Sports is July 2023 right now. And looking at some of the documents here, according to 24/7 Sports from FAU, it says that the Owls sent an estimated 769 photos of FAU Stadium to EA Sports to get an accurate scan of the stadium. 769. So they want, I mean, the obvious point of doing that is recreating the stadium in 3D and using that in the game and having like actually, you know, correct dimensions and different spaces and all types of things. But 769 photos so that their people can reconstruct the stadium and put it into the game. That's incredible in its own right. And there's also a lot of like close-up images apparently of like different sections of the stadium, probably for like those crowd shots. The Delray Hyundai deck also included. All these like kind of interesting pieces that separate the stadiums, maybe are interesting characteristics. Now, FAU also gives EA Sports approval to include the Howard Schnellenberger, that's a tough one, statue that sits at the stadium. So anything, what that means to me, anything pertinent or specific to that team, they obviously need the licensing and the rights to use that likeness in the game because all the rights and things belong to like the stadium, the program, the person, whatever. So they're getting the rights for all of that. So they send photos of the statue, the surrounding area, and then all of the like student sections and different things like that. You also go along with a ton of audio assets. This is a big piece. There's a whole spreadsheet here, and I may as well actually just pull it up and kind of show you like the article from 24/7 Sports here. This spreadsheet is kind of crazy. It's from apparently the band and like what all they send into what they sent into EA here. And I need to be able to pull this over. It's not letting me. All right, well, you're gonna see potentially an ad on there. Well, you'll get over it. But you can see here there's a spreadsheet of like all the band audio that was included, and you can see all this stuff. Like it goes down a list, and then even more, you've got crowd chants from FAU that were sent. So this is not like Some people think you just pump in crowd noise, you put different colors in the same stadium. They're reconstructing the stadium in 3D space. They're putting in specific, like actual real life audio clips from the student section, from the band, the theme song, fight songs, those kind of things that make college football so special. That's why the games are so awesome. You talk about like constructing mascots and doing those kind of things. Talk about how many Division I squads they're already doing that. Now, I've heard from different places potentially that they'll have FCS teams available as like downloadable content down the road. But man, I know somebody will go on and do it and like put the names and the colors and the jerseys and stuff of some D2 teams. That'd be really cool as like a extra kind of DLC type piece. I just don't see them getting there. I really don't. There's way too much work that goes into this, way too many man hours that goes into making these teams and totally adjusting them and getting them ready for a game of this caliber. And then you talk about they're paying supposedly a pool of about $5 million total to all the players. It's about like $5 million each. Or $5 million each, holy shit, 500 each, roughly, to players to use their likeness in the game. Again, just things that have been reported. I have no idea if it's 100% true or not, but obviously with name, image, and likeness, you have to compensate the players for these things. It's a new era of college football. But I just thought this was really interesting. Like, there's so much that goes into this game that the school has to be in like an integral part of everything going on here. I thought that was a really neat kind of portion. But that is... That's about all we've got for tonight. Nothing too crazy. We'll be joined, hopefully next week, going to start getting back on Jimmy Martin, Matt Schwarzler, and talk some more D3 NAIA ball and some kind of other things. But if you guys have any idea for some off-season content you'd like to see from us, I could be spitballing here every week for the rest of my life. Wouldn't matter to me. But if you got things you want to see, you let me know. Send us a DM. Shoot us a comment on one of the platforms on YouTube, on Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is. Reply. But I want to do a lot more stuff in person this offseason, going down, interviewing coaches on campus, doing facility tours. I'd love to get on some of that. I need to start reaching out and getting those things done. But if there's anything you want to see specifically, let us know. It's the only way we're going to know. So I appreciate you all tuning in. A little bit of a shorter episode today, but it's been a good one.